Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Good morning to all of you here in the sanctuary. I know we're still getting settled this morning. And good morning to all of you joining us online today. We're going to start today with a musical prelude from John Mayhood. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Charlottesville. I'm Angela Orbaugh, and I'm pleased to be weaving worship this morning with Reverend Tim Timerson, along with music director Scott DeVoe, accompanist John Mayhood, and the UUCville Choir. The sanctuary was built over 70 years ago on land that was the homeland of the Monacan people, and that was once cared for by enslaved people from Africa and their descendants. We honor all who have dwelt here and all in our congregation whose lives led to this moment of our gathering. I invite you now to take a moment to greet others. Those online may unmute and say hello, and those in here in the sanctuary or in the social hall are welcome to greet your neighbors, especially those you may not know.
Hello.
Good morning, everybody. Ask Amy.
Hi, Margaret. I heard you say something, but it was very faint.
I wanted to know from Amy what time the yoga class is on Friday.
10 a.m. to 11 a.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's cool. Is that yoga at church?
It is. We meet
cool.
in the lower hall number 2.
Nice. Very cool. Oh, yeah.
Lots of wonderful fall greetings this morning. We offer a special welcome to newcomers and invite you to join us for fellowship after the service in the social hall, which is down that way. Please feel free to use one of our red coffee mugs, which are for visitors. And we encourage you to stop by the connections table, which is near the monitor in the social hall. Now, seating is available in the social hall for service today, where there's a live stream. Everyone is welcome in the sanctuary, but if you need a little bit of extra room, the social hall can be a good option. Many thanks to all of the folks that are helping us share worship both here and online today. Our greeters, our ushers, hospitality and logistics team, and special thanks to our rock star AV tech, Rachel Buckland, supporting the dual platform worship, both online and here on Rugby Road. And now we have greetings from our board member, Aksha Carrier. Actually, you want to use this one? There you go.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Aksha Carrier, and I'm a new member of the board. I just began here in July, and and so far it's been a lot of fun. So I hope we go on having a lot of fun. I have also agreed to be on the strategic planning task force, which is going to start doing something next month. We haven't decided exactly what we're doing, but we know that it will involve you and inviting everyone to participate in a lot of different kinds of conversations about what's important to us and what we hope to be doing going forward, maybe over the next 3 to 5 years. So I hope you'll look out for that and join us to give us your interests and concerns. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aksha. So here are some announcements this morning. After the children are sung out of service, they will go to the parlor for children's worship rather than the classrooms. So parents or caregivers, please remember to pick your children up at the parlor after the service. Are you new to the UU Congregation of Charlottesville? Interested in learning more about UUCville and Unitarian Universalism? Well, join Reverend Tim and several lay leaders today at 12:15 on the patio near the back entrance of the social hall for our monthly newcomers circle. Wedding bells are ringing for our wonderful AV tech, Rachel Buckland. Rachel and her fiance Jeb are getting married, and we are inviting you to gift the happy couple with cash or check. There is a donation box in the social hall. It is already there near the coffee at the window that looks into the kitchen. Checks should be made out directly to Rachel Buckland. You can also Venmo Rachel up on the screen, Rachel-Buckland-1.
Right, good morning, everyone. I think I saw Rachel hiding back there behind the monitor as we were making that announcement, but we're so happy for you, Rachel, and I hope that you all will, like Angela said, gift the happy couple a little something to get their married lives off to a wonderful, wonderful start. So Angela and I would like to share a call to worship with you this morning from Katie Romano Griffin. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community.
Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion, and compassion.
Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts.
Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us.
Come into this space mindful that together we are building a future for other generations.
Come into this space and let us worship. We have Noah and Charlie Garrett Redmond today to light the flame of the chalice. Please join me as they light our chalice in saying our unison chalice words. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Now you can join me in the hand motions. We have our hand out like the matchbook. Our finger is the match. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is a church of the open minds. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving hearts. So please rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses, and the words will be on the screen as well.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being and all. Deep with the web of creation, O God. Living, receiving as the church of the sky. Wake now, compassion, and heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the whole sky. Make us your neighbor, the stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Oh, there is, really? Okay, so sorry. Excuse me? Wake now, my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with the people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted the privilege played. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Guide my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work towards a planet transformed by our care.
Well, good morning again. I wonder if I could persuade the children, the young at heart, to come on down front, have a seat down here on the carpet. I want to share with you something exciting that happened to me last weekend. All right, come on down. Come on down. Yes, indeed. I'm going to sit down too. I might never get back up, but I'm going to sit down. Hello, everybody. Hello. Good morning. How are you all? Good, 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 good. I'm glad to hear it. So, I want to tell you what happened to me last weekend. So, after church last Sunday, I had a chance to go somewhere, and I met someone I'd never met before. You know who I met? The president. The president. What do you think of that? Pretty exciting, huh? Yeah. Now, I want to show you the president's picture. There she is. She looks a lot younger than that person I think you were probably thinking of, huh? So that is Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, and she is the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. She's the president, she's the leader of Unitarian Universalism. I'd never met her before. She's very, very nice. She asked me about all of you. And of course, you know what I told her? I said, UUCville has the coolest kids in the world. She said, oh, I bet that's true. And I hope someday I get to meet him. In fact, I hope maybe someday we can get her to come here and join us for a service on Sunday. That would be really, really cool. So the reason I wanted to tell you a little bit about Reverend Sophia is that she is the second woman to ever serve as president of our denomination. And the Unitarian Universalist Association has been around a long time. And the last two presidents have both been women, and that's really, really great. In fact, I'm going to be talking later this morning about all the wonderful, wonderful things that women have done to make Unitarian Universalism such a great, great religious tradition. So we owe the women UU so much. They have done so much good work to make us who we are today. In fact, some of my favorite Unitarian Universalists, my favorite UU ministers are women because they're so smart and creative and just super, super cool. So let me ask you a question. Do you all know a woman UU minister? Are you familiar? You ever met one before? No? Really? No? Take a look around. Maybe like to your left, like right over there. Yeah, but if you're not sure about that, I got a picture of her up on the screen here. Yeah, there she is. Now, I mean, I have to tell you, that is the coolest UU minister I know. Definitely, definitely. So, and Reverend Leah has been our religious education leader and now minister for a long time, and she does a great, great job. Don't we all agree with that? Yes. And before you all go off to your special worship today, today's a very special day for Reverend Leah. Today is her birthday. So I wonder if I could ask all of you and our wonderful music director, Scott, to get us going with a little happy birthday for Reverend Leah. Thank you all very much for listening to my little story about meeting the president and for joining us in wishing Reverend Leah a very, very happy birthday. So now you all can go off to the parlor. Remember, you're going to the parlor, not to your classrooms today. So can we sing our children out?
Let it be a
What a blessing our choir is. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Scott and John, and all of those wonderful, wonderful voices. I imagine all of you have been watching the news some and know about the events that are going on in Israel, Palestine. I had planned to offer a prayer this morning for Indigenous Peoples Day, which is coming up on Tuesday, thankfully no longer celebrated as Columbus Day. And I do want to offer our love, our commitment, our passion for justice, for righting wrongs and healing wounds that have been committed for centuries, right here in this country, right here in this city, right here in this place, on this land. I do want to invite us to take a moment to be together in a time of prayer and silence for the victims of this latest war and of wars everywhere. I continue to stand here on Sunday mornings, sit in my space where I write sermons, and ask, when will that day arrive? when humankind finally learns how to live in peace? I don't know the answer to that question. So for now, I invite us to take a moment to be together in the shared silence as we pray, hope, imagine a world of peace. Amen. We are an interconnected community that cares for one another. Part of how we embody this care is by making time each week to share the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts. I will now share what was submitted before worship this morning. Friends, as we move into our ritual of joys and sorrows, you are invited to come forward and place a glass stone in the water to represent a joy or sorrow in your life. I also invite our pastoral care team member, Patty Wallens, to come forward. Please know that Patty will be available for a few minutes after the service in the back corner of the sanctuary, right over there, if you are in need of pastoral support or just want someone to listen. Those online can contact the pastoral care team by emailing pastoral@ucharlottesville.org. And now, as we enter this time of sharing, may our ritual bring to our lives healing, comfort, and hope.
Our reading today is titled To Make a Significant Difference by Lucille Shuck Longview. As an introduction to this reading, in the mid-1970s, a group of courageous UU women proposed a resolution that committed Unitarian Universalism to ridding itself of the patriarchal language, structures, and practices that systematically marginalized women. The author of the resolution was Lucille Shuck Longview, and here is an excerpt from a reflection she wrote about the journey leading up to its adoption. The Women and Religion Resolution, adopted unanimously by the UUA General Assembly in 1977, calls on the Unitarian Universalist Association to make a significant difference in the religious perceptions of our time. It calls on religious professionals and laity to bring into focus the basic assumptions that undergird our worldview and their sexist nature. It calls on us to name that which is so obvious we are blinded to its presence, to name the fact that all religions with a Judeo-Christian heritage have as their mythic basis the assumptions that man is the human being, that male perception is total, that he rightly speaks for all, and that he is the keeper of the gate. For centuries, women have waited outside the gate. But a new consciousness is arising. Feminists, theologians, and women in congregations are beginning to recognize that the patriarchal religious message does not include them, and they are choosing various ways of responding to that understanding. The resolution is unique, not only in that it was initiated and promoted by women in congregations, but also in calling on the institution, the UUA, with its affiliates and members to question and broaden the basic assumptions on which our system of values rests. We do this in the belief that the quality of our lives will be enriched by the incorporation of women's values and experiences into our religious tradition. It is a call from women in congregation for worship services, whether designed by women or men, that recognize our presence and build our dignity and self-worth. We are asking for that gate to be opened. This community offers its love and support to what is closest to our hearts. Another way we show our care for one another is in sharing our financial gifts with our community and our congregation. Our social action collection for the month of October is Sin Barreras, whose mission is to empower immigrants and their families in Central Virginia with a focus on the Latinx population by educating, advocating, and supporting their needs. Rachel, thanks for showing the slide for social action. And for all those who would like to give now, in addition to giving online, if you would like to give today with cash or check, please use the social action collection envelopes here in the sanctuary. Place your offering in the collection plate. Please don't seal those envelopes though, because we do reuse those. Now, along with our social action collection, each week we invite everyone into the spiritual practice of generosity by giving to the ministry of our congregation. Through your pledges and with the weekly Sunday morning offering, together our financial gifts and support sustain our congregation. This is our shared ministry. During the music that follows, you may choose to make your Sunday morning offering by using the text address or going to our website. Here in the sanctuary, once again, you can place your cash or checks in the collection plates as they are passed. Let us dedicate all of the many gifts we share with one another by saying, "We accept your gifts with gratitude. May we use them wisely for the highest good."
Thank you, John. That was really beautiful. And thank you all, as always, so very much for your generosity. It's great to see you all this morning. Thank you so much for coming on what is a bit of a cloudy day. I have to say, I've met a lot of new first-time folks this morning when I was outside greeting, and it's just wonderful to see so many new folks giving us a try. What's the term? Kicking the tires, taking us out for a test drive. So thank you so much for joining us. And just reiterate what Angela announced earlier. If you are new to the congregation, if this is your first time, that you are most invited to join us at 12:15 out on the patio, just right over there, for a 30-minute newcomer circle. It's very informal and relaxed. You don't have to have signed up. So I hope to see some of you there. That would be really, really wonderful. So, and Angela, thanks as always for your great help and support today. And I really enjoyed hearing you share Lucille Longview's reading a few minutes ago. I want to just let you all know that today's sermon and service is the first of a two-part series. Our monthly theme is heritage, and I am using that as an invitation, I guess, to talk a little bit about the UU past, the journey that we're on, and where we are today, and where I think we're going in the future. So the conversation, next Sunday's service will complete the two-part series, and then after the service, we'll have a conversation in here, which all who are here are invited, and those of you on Zoom, I won't be asking Rachel. She's got this whole wedding thing. I don't know what that's all about, but I think Sean will be up there next Sunday, and we'll keep the Zoom going, and we'll have a dual platform conversation about something in particular that we really haven't had a chance to talk much about yet, which is a proposed revision to Article 2 of our denomination's bylaws. And that particular article contains the principles and purposes of the Unitarian Universalist Association, including our current 7 UU principles. And the proposal would, if it's adopted, would replace those principles with new language that centers core values like justice, generosity, pluralism, and love. Now, I'll say more about the proposed revision next Sunday, and then we'll talk about it after the service. I have to say that I think that the proposed revision of Article 2 marks a transformational moment in the history of Unitarian Universalism, a moment that I believe, and this is my opinion, will help our religious tradition become more inclusive, more welcoming, more just, and more loving. Now today, I want to put that discussion and that conversation in some context by looking back at what I see as the last really major significant shift in our faith tradition, which began about 50 years ago and led to the adoption of the current 7 UU principles, and also inspired much of the transformation in Unitarian Universalism over the last 5 or 6 decades. Transformation which, in my view, has enriched Unitarian Universalism so very much and helped us become a religion of head and heart, individual freedom, and beloved community. Now, the story of this transformation from 50 years ago begins with the courage and the vision of a fairly small group of Unitarian Universalist women. And let me tell you a little bit about one of those women. Her name, as you heard earlier, was Lucille Shook Longview. And I think it's fair to say that Lucille Longview, I think, may be the most important and influential person in the history of our faith tradition that very few Unitarian Universalists have ever heard of. And there's a picture. That's Lucille a number of years after all that resolution was adopted. And there she is. She's the one on the right. And sorry, it's a little blurry, with some of the other really, really, really important Unitarian Universalist women who led that movement in the 1970s and whose legacy in Unitarian Universalism lives on to this very day. Now, throughout Lucille's life, she was active as a Unitarian Universalist and in a variety of social justice and community endeavors. She was, for example, passionately concerned about the rights and treatment of the elderly and was an early member of the Gray Panthers. Lucille was also a committed environmentalist and worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the need for humankind to live in harmony with, rather than in opposition to, the planet. Lucille, of course, was a feminist and outspoken advocate for women's rights, who dedicated much of her life to building a future of inclusion and justice for women everywhere, including and especially in Unitarian Universalism. And by the way, it was Lucille's passion for a better future that led her to add the word Longview to her last name. For years, she was Lucille, I don't remember what her pre-married name was. She was Lucille Shook, and then she added Longview because she was dedicating her life to building a future, a better future, not only in the short term, but in the long term. Now, in the mid-1970s, Lucille served as a UU delegate to the UN International Women's Year Conference, while listening to one story after another chronicling the oppression and patriarchy that women experienced across the world. Lucille came to the conclusion that religion was a huge part of the problem. I'm guessing she probably figured that out before that conference. And the reason she believed this was because religion provided much of the foundation and justification for the subordination and oppression of women. And Lucille felt very strongly that that observation most assuredly also applied to Unitarian Universalism. Now, at first glance, describing us, UU, as patriarchal and oppressive may sound a little odd, maybe even kind of harsh. I mean, after all, Unitarians and Universalists played important roles in the struggle to guarantee women the right to vote, and both traditions were also early supporters of the movement for birth control. Unitarians and Universalists counted as members many important and influential women in American history, and it was the Universalist Church of America that ordained Reverend Olympia Brown into the ministry in 1860, making her the first woman in the United States to ever be ordained into the ministry by a denomination. That's a pretty good record. But in spite of all these accomplishments, for much of its history, Unitarian Universalism was guided by the assumptions of patriarchy and, well, how do I say it? Male dominance and male superiority. For example, while women almost always made up the majority of our congregations and comprised most of our church volunteers, some things never change, they were frequently kept out of top leadership positions. Even after the merger of the Unitarians and the Universalists in 1861, UU ministry was dominated by men, and as late as 1980, and I found this statistic, 1980, women only comprised about 5% of Unitarian Universalist ministers. If a woman wanted to be a religious professional, her primary avenue was to become a religious educator, but not also an ordained minister. And lay leadership often followed much the same pattern. Many congregations' governing boards tended to be male-dominated, and women did not generally begin serving as congregational presidents until the 1970s or even later. And remember, the first woman ever elected to serve as president of our association was elected just 7 years ago. And then, of course, there was the problem, as you heard earlier, of religious language. In spite of Unitarian Universalism's long history of religious tolerance and openness, the use of patriarchal language was commonplace. A few moments ago, Angela read an excerpt from that reflection about the Women in Religion resolution, in which she described how exclusive our language and principles had been. Those principles, the ones that were originally adopted in 1961, and we don't ever even talk about those anymore, they spoke of the dignity of man. They stressed the ideal of universal brotherhood. They celebrated a religious heritage centered on love of God and man, and called on us to encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land. But thanks to Lucille and her female colleagues, things began to shift and change in the 1970s. She wrote the draft resolution urging Unitarian Universalists to review their own beliefs and to reconsider teachings that, as she said, perpetuate attitudes that cause women everywhere to be overlooked and undervalued. A group of very dedicated women from her home congregation in Lexington, Massachusetts, circulated this draft resolution that Lucille wrote to thousands of Unitarian Universalists across the country and got it placed before the General Assembly in 1977. And it was there that this historic, what I think might be the most important resolution that's ever been put before Unitarian Universalists in our history, the Women in Religion resolution, was adopted. And it's not an exaggeration to say that this resolution forever changed Unitarian Universalism. And I don't think I'm saying anything controversial here to say unquestionably changed it for the better. For one thing, the demand for gender inclusive language, that was the spark that led to a review of the 1961 principles and a fairly extended, very democratic conversation and process was developed, and we went through that. And that was what eventually led to the adoption of the current 7 UU principles. So our 7 principles were developed because a group of Unitarian Universalist women said enough. Enough with the sexism, the patriarchy, and the exclusion. But the movement for gender justice and equity embodied in that resolution had an impact far beyond just the 7 principles. For example, that same commitment to inclusive language led to the creation of our current hymnals, that gray hardcover that hopefully is in your pews, and then some years later, the teal hymnal as well. It was that desire to make our language more inclusive that led to the creation of those hymnals. Also, and perhaps more importantly, that resolution absolutely threw open the doors of the ministry to women in Unitarian Universalism. And since the late 1980s, right up to today, women have been entering UU ministry in wonderful, astonishingly wonderful numbers. In fact, while women made up just 5% of the ministers in 1980, they make up just over 60% of our ministers today. So I'm in the minority. Isn't that wonderful? So I know. By the way, 3 out of 4 of every aspiring UU minister is female identified. But for all of these extraordinary accomplishments, I think the most important contribution that Lucille Longview and the women's movement within Unitarian Universalism made was the way we UUs have come to understand ourselves, our spiritual journeys, our faith communities, and what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. You see, prior to the emergence and impact of the women's movement in the 1970s, I think it's fair to say that we UUs placed a pretty heavy emphasis on the importance of the individual and individual freedom. We assigned primary value to the use of reason and intellect. and embraced a fairly top-down approach to ministry and leadership. But thanks in large part to the contributions of women over the last 50 years, we UUs have come to value and appreciate the importance of mind and spirit, the essential roles played by ritual and spiritual practice for our journeys of faith, and the need for a shared approach to ministry and leadership in our congregations and our denominations. And that brings me to the vision of religion and of UU bequeathed to us by Lucille and her wonderful colleagues. And I think what they taught us is that this faith we call Unitarian Universalism must always be about widening the circle of love and inclusion. Unitarian Universalism must be about opening doors that have been closed and welcoming all souls to the table of love and community. Notice I didn't say brotherhood. And Unitarian Universalism must always be about building a world free from those barriers that divide us against them and that leave some to be marginalized and oppressed. We UUs can and must follow the path blazed by those brave women who journeyed boldly into the future and who pointed the way to a world in which all people and our planet are valued, appreciated, welcomed, and loved. And if there's one essential lesson I think we need to learn from those extraordinary contributions of UU women over the last 50 years, I think it is that Unitarian Universalism is at its best and reaches for, if I can say it, greatness when we are listening to the voices of those who have been marginalized in our faith and in our world, and who are challenging us to tear down walls of privilege and exclusion. We must always be asking whose voices have been or are being ignored. What assumptions are we making? And what messages are we conveying that are keeping the doors of full inclusion and equality closed in our faith? Those are the questions Lucille Longview and UU women asked 50 years ago, and their insistence that Unitarian Universalism see itself honestly forever changed us and helped make Unitarian Universalism a more loving and inclusive religious tradition. So let me just conclude by saying, I hope you'll be here next Sunday, either in person or on Zoom, for part 2 of this series and for the conversation that follows. I'm going to share with you the story of another key transformational moment in Unitarian Universalism that happened around the same time as the women's movement got going in UU. But this moment didn't spark a change. It was one of the colossal missed opportunities in Unitarian Universalism, and one that we are just now, finally at long last, reaching out and healing and doing something about. How's that for a teaser for next Sunday? And I'm just going to argue next Sunday that Unitarian Universalism, I think today, is on a journey to correct the missed opportunity and mistake we made, and that the proposed revision of our principles and purposes is part of an effort to correct that mistake and to build a deeper, more inclusive, and more just Unitarian Universalism. See you next Sunday. So now let's rise in body or spirit. I want to invite you to join in singing a wonderful hymn, which, by the way, has an important connection to the UU women's movement from the 1970s. This is Come Sing a Song With Me. Many of you know it. We'll be playing a video with the lyrics. Now, Come Sing a Song With Me is one of 3 hymns in the Gray Hymnal whose words come from the fabulous Carolyn McDade. That name is not familiar. Carolyn McDade is the writer of Spirit of Life, which is the most beloved hymn, I think, in all of Unitarian Universalism. And she was part of this group of Unitarian Universalist women. And my understanding, for example, is that Spirit of Life was originally sort of a sung poem that women's spirituality groups that really got going in the 1970s used to sing as they did something else that they brought to Unitarian, that UU women brought to Unitarian Universalism, which is this. Ever wondered, when did UU start lighting a flaming chalice? This practice started among Unitarian Universalist women meeting in small women's spirituality groups in the 1970s, as I understand it. And now a chalice is lit in every Unitarian Universalist congregation as far as I know. That's more history than you probably wanted to know. So let's rise in body or spirit, join in singing. Come sing a song with me. Please rise. Angela, will you please extinguish our chalice? And I leave you with these words from Cynthia Landrum. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our care for each other, our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues until we are together again, friends. Be strong, be well, be true, and be loving. Amen. Blessed be those. Don't forget, parents, go to the parlor to pick those kiddos up. Hope to see some of you at the newcomer circle. Have a blessed and wonderful day, wonderful week. Go in peace.